We just keep showing up, buddy. like a bad fly on you at the Mexican restaurant.
Like a bad fly on your burrito. We're back. You're back. Hopefully better than ever. It's April 27th, year 2023. Welcome aboard, everybody. Listen to the Crushing Pie podcast. This is episode 680.
Crushing Pie podcast.
Crushing Fly podcast.
Yeah, we should do that, you know.
Yeah, we're back like a fly in your burrito on the patio at the La Guadalajara Grill. That's us. Yeah, we're back. It's funny you said we just keep showing up. I do want to tell a quick story. We're not going to make this the podcast topic, but talking about just showing up, because I was going to venture there today, but we're not, because I think we might actually talk about swimming today, which always kind of gets my juices flowing, which, to be fair, and we'll do our intro in here in a minute, sometimes I feel like when you mention the word swimming, you're kind of already like kicked back in your robe with like a couple cups of coffee close by and like Netflix propped up next to you, because you know that if you get me on swimming that you will have to only do like maybe 10% of the legwork today, and you're like, you know what, I'm not really feeling really putting in much effort to the podcast. You know what I should do? I should tell Robbie we should get on swimming and then just kind of let him roll. So I feel like that happens. But anyway, going back to what you said about just showing up, Hayden went to the zoo yesterday for a field trip, and Allie went as one of the chaperones, and they're on their feet all day long. I think she tracked like over 6 miles of coverage. So he gets home and he's destroyed. I mean, they're outside. It's outside weather. It's sunny. Kids, they just don't walk everywhere. They run. So I know he was on his feet and running around for, 6+ hours. And so he gets home and I look at him and he looks like he's been playing at the pool for 8 hours. And he just looks destroyed. This is supposed to be his first practice. As he moved up in a hockey session to a little harder session with a lot more advanced and skilled players. It's supposed to be at 6:20. Doesn't start till 6:20, which, for me is like, that's when I kind of like start doing my sleepy time tea, try to get my wine down. I'm like trying to get ready for the next day, but that's just, I guess, kid sports. And so he gets home at 4 and I look at him and I'm like, man, there's no way he's going to make this. I was like, buddy, do you want to go to practice tonight? And he was like, I don't know. I don't think that I need to. I don't think I need to go. I was like, all right, well, just let me check back with you at 5:15, because it takes a little bit to get out there, and we'll see what happens. Of course, gets a little bit of food in him, takes a little bit of time. We're going to recharge. And of course, at like the last minute, he's like, I want to go.
I want to go.
And I'm like, yeah, he's like, I want to go. I'm like, are you sure? Because once I load it up, because it's not like we're going for a run. We got to drive 30 minutes. We got to get dressed. It's a whole thing. And I was like, once we commit, we're in. I was like, so you sure you want to go? He goes, yeah, I want to go. So we get there. He has the best practice he's ever had.
Unreal.
And I just sat there. I was talking to another dad who's got a kid in Hayden's class at school. He went to the zoo today, and I was like, they look shelled. And he had easily his best practice. Not from like, some outstanding performance, but he paid attention. He focused. He had things. So I don't know. It was a good lesson in it, as for me as a parent too, and not just, I think the lesson for athletes is that like, you can always find wins even when you're tired, right? You don't want to go dig yourself a hole, right? It wasn't like he was breaking any land speed record. He was working on using his edges and doing some tight turns better and doing a couple of things. And those are, so he still got something out of it, even though he was tired. And I didn't make the decision for him that he couldn't go. And I told him that. I said, that's one of the after practice, that's one of the best practices you've ever had. But that's not what I'm the most proud of. I'm the most proud because you decided to go. Even though me, I was like, I really kind of hope he doesn't go, because I had a long day yesterday and I'd love to kick back. But if you want to encourage, kids to get out and do things even when they're not feeling perfect, then you got to support. And so anyway, I thought that was when you said, just kind of show up. He showed up and had, shockingly, a great practice. So it goes back to something that you and I talk about a ton on the podcast and in general, is just that, you never know. We talked about it last week in our bailout podcast. It was like, you really just, as much as we love to predict and love to like act like we really know what's going to happen with our constant expectations, we have no idea. No, we just don't, which I think, is honestly kind of the fun of it.
Yeah, it is. And there's something there, man, about just showing up, because I was at that wall yesterday afternoon, and I was thinking about doing my run, and I could have done it here, but I just wasn't feeling it. So I was like, you know what, just get in the car and drive over to that place where there's some trails. And once you get there, you know, you kind of figure it out. And it's just like you're there then. You can't just stop and come back home. And I don't know, those kind of tricks are always in my brain. And it's a good thing we do what we do. We're a little bit flexible, because I can't get in that rhythm, man, that morning rhythm sometimes. And sometimes I just need to let it air out a little bit and then find that time when I'm like, all right, I feel it now, or at least I can get over the hump and I can get down there or do something. Those are the things that always, what do they say? 90% of life is showing up anyway.
Yeah.
You know, because like you're always afraid to go do something and then it works out fine, you know?
Yep. 100%.
Movement.
Which it's good for everybody, especially now that, you know, we all have an excuse to not do anything and just kind of stay at home. It's always good to have an excuse, or instead of using an excuse, get out and do something. And we're getting out today and we're doing something. That's our podcast. If it's your first time tuning in today, welcome. We appreciate you giving us your time. We know you have quite a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe, and just podcasts in general terms are very valuable. So we appreciate you tuning in today. We cover it all. We do swim, bike, and run specific podcasts. We do race recaps and also a lot of race previews. But for the most part, Mike and I, as coaches, athletes, best friends, we just sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through in life, not just as human beings, but also as coaches and athletes ourselves. We also talk a lot about what our own athletes are going through. Mike and I work with a wide range of athletes all across the globe, from beginner level triathletes looking at the very first 5K or sprint triathlon, all the way up through elite level amateurs trying to get back to world championships, and everyone in between from all over the globe. And we use the feedback loop we have with them in training peaks, emails, text messages, and the like to drive the discussion of the day. We also frequently utilize our Facebook group. You can search that, Crushing Iron Group. Awesome people. Fantastic community, solid resource. If you're looking for a place to answer some of your big questions or the stumpers that you can't seem to figure out, and you look online and there's 19 different answers to one simple question, it's a great place. A lot of experienced athletes there, again, from everywhere from beginners all the way up through, middle of the pack athletes, like most athletes are that live a life and triathletes are hobby, up, with Ironman champions and Kona qualifiers. So everyone in there willing to help in and lend a helping hand. So be a part of that community. Every once in a while, we'll go in there and do a little bit of a Q&A, take the pulse of the community, do our best to answer any questions that we can get to in a timely manner, which is usually over at least a podcast or two. But that's it. We don't do sponsors. We don't do ads, but we do have an agenda, and that's to do our best to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
Yep, that's what we do. I was thinking about something yesterday, because it's 20 weeks for me. This is 20 weeks out from Wisconsin. That's all I have on the slate as of now. And, it's fine with me. I think that doing other races will help, but with all the stuff I got going on and the moving and everything like that and all our camps and whatever, I'm just kind of cool with that. And I was sort of thinking about my race and goals. I'm not a big goal guy, but I got to thinking about it, and I'm like, there's certain things I want to do with this race, and so I kind of like laid out. It's sort of like that. What is that? Shoot for the sun and land on the moon thing.
Yeah, something like that.
Is that the
same thing?
Yeah. So I'm kind of like, I was like, all right, what's my shoot for the sun? And I kind of laid it all out. And then I went through a whole process of like, okay, yeah, that sounds nice, but what are you going to have to do to kind of get into that sun territory? And then maybe if you land on the moon, that'll be just fine. But it's just an interesting concept. I don't know if you think about that much when you're thinking about races, but kind of, it's one thing to go through TriCalc and kind of figure that shit out, but it's really another thing to be like, okay, is this even real? And of course it's real. I think most people think they can do a lot better than they do, but how are you going to get there? And I started laying that out, and I was like, shit, I don't know if this is like in me, because you kind of know, you know what I mean? You kind of feel like, all right, you know what you can do, you know what your baseline is, and then you know what it's going to take. And really, for me, a lot of it came down to just being kind of on fire about the bike. You know what I mean? Especially at Wisconsin. So, like putting in a lot of time. And do I really think that's going to be it? I don't know. But since you want to talk about swimming.
Well, let me say something real quick to your thing, and just so also, you probably just freaked out everybody that's thinking about doing Ironman Wisconsin. They were like, man, that sounds pretty quick. They're looking at their calendar like, man, I better get my act together.
I know.
Because it did, like in a pre-show, you're like, yeah, I got 20 weeks out. And I'm thinking 20 weeks out, like, is that June camp? We got triathlon camp in
no
months.
Kidding.
Like,
well, the indicator, you know what it is now? It's the lawn care guy showed up today. That's my kick in the pants. First mow of the season.
Ooh. You guys are a little bit behind, but yeah, the first mow is kind of like the seasonal kickoff of triathlon training for most people, and the yard work and the mulching. But no, I think this is actually a topic that we can talk about something a little bit if we get, depending how far we get with this one. But the shoot for the sun, or shoot for the moon and land and the sun, or whatever it is. I think it's like shoot for the stars and land and the moon, or whatever it is. But anyway, what they're trying to say is shoot as high as you can go, and if that's your goal and you actually put in the work, right, to get there, then you're still going to be farther than ever before. And I think that last little asterisk is one that we all have to remember is a lot of people, I think, register for races and pick races with a lot of hopes and dreams and aspirations and expectations, but they don't necessarily go backwards on the work that's going to take to get there. It's kind of like a lot of people think up a new business and they're like, yeah, I really think this business becomes successful, really, and they're excited about it, that's something they want to do, and 80% of the Starbucks in America right now, someone's pitching their new idea, right? Yeah. To disrupt to be a disruptor, and they're excited about it. They know it's going to work, and it feels like I know it. I can feel it. It's going to be the next big thing. And then, the buzzkill guy, which is, also could be a coach, but like, their financial advisors, like, all right, well, so let's go through like, a revenue expense, analysis here. And they run through it and they're like, you're negative $2 million in the first year. Like, oh, well, maybe it's not that great of an idea. Right. But a lot of people don't do that. They just go into business. Right. And we've all seen businesses like this when, drive by strip malls and we're like, At what point did you think that, selling that was going to be a really solid business idea, right? And because they probably didn't do the work, right, to basically ask the hard questions. And I think that, again, goes back to registering for a race, having expectations, expecting a result, and then attaching to it when you don't attach yourself to the work that's required. And again, I'm not going to hammer that down because we talk about it a lot in terms of, owning your journey and doing the work and then ultimately owning the result. But what I love about what you said about is kind of like aiming different. I've actually been thinking about that a lot in terms of I started playing tennis about 6 weeks ago. Hadn't played in forever. And at that time, I was very inconsistent in my training because as a coach, triathlon is your job. Triathlon is your hobby, but it feels like your job because it's, you know the drill, it's become part of it. And I was like, I need to like rekindle my competitive nature and do something that's challenging. And I also at the same time, I'm getting coached, by someone else, and I can do something that's competitive each and every time I go, where I can get out of because, for athletes, especially if you don't race a ton, then you kind of lose that competitive nature of what it's like to really get after it. Back, 2018 was last year. I think I raced like 3 or 4 times that year. And that was the best year I had. But I think it was because I raced a lot. And then now I've kind of gone, 3 or 4 races in 3 or 4 years. And what I've noticed since doing it is that ever since I started playing again, I haven't missed a training session in triathlon. Haven't missed one. It's allowed me to kind of like compartmentalize the two because of adding a hobby instead of like, oh, I don't have enough time to train. It's like, man, but I want to be engaged. I want to be competitive. And I've actually found that I think it's helped me gain confidence in my training to race by doing something different. And then exploring like, being more competitive. And it's still a great workout. I mean, I went yesterday, I ran 10 miles in the morning, then I actually got like a lesson because I was super rusty and it hit the ball great yesterday, but I'm way out of tennis shape. Anyway, long story short is that I can feel a difference in my attitude and how I'm approaching things by kind of aiming in a different direction, right? For me, it's been tennis, right? For someone else, it might be, like you said, really focusing on the bike, right? Instead of focusing on the end result, right? Which is, maybe, beating your previous time or qualifying for this or placing top 30 in your age group or, having a run PR, whatever it is, aiming for the specific result, the total result can oftentimes lead into self-sabotage, overcommitting. It feels overwhelming, right? And it puts all of your eggs in one basket. And the likelihood of that happening is kind of very slim. But if you focus on one thing, right, that's maybe that from a relationship standpoint, when one relationship is good, most other relationships are also good, right? If one relationship is really, really bad, it kind of deteriorates into making all relationships bad. And I think that's a great way to approach long-term training, long-term success, big goals, right? By, hey, I really want to do this race and really want to do this Ironman Wisconsin really well. I have this goal. Instead of focusing on the time, I'm going to focus on a specific detail of what will allow me to probably have this time, but let the results will be what the results are. Because I also know that if I focus really, really, really hard on the bike and get really, really good on it and I can come off and run really well, then I'm going to be set up, to be in a better spot, right? And same thing, it could be go for swimming, So I think there's a lot of great things that can come out of, kind of disassociating for your main goal by focusing on what we would call like a complementary goal, right? Because focusing on your cycling and becoming a better cyclist is still going to, bring, so what is it like? A rising tide raises all boats.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very similar, right? Instead of focusing on the boat itself, focus on how to raise your tide. How to really elevate things in 2 or 3 different other areas. And then if you do that, then it'll elevate the result instead of just focusing on the result. And we've even done a podcast called Micro Goals, and that was a really popular podcast. If you've been listening to it, go back. I'm not sure what number it is, but it was one of our more popular podcasts about setting very small, incremental, strategic, periodized, specific goals that are relatable to training, but that are also small and attainable and measurable, that will allow you to race better on race day instead of kind of getting distracted or disinterested in a goal that, like you said, 20 weeks away can also seem short, but also seem like, 16 weeks is really all I need. And the 16-week comes, you're like, I've done this in 12. 12 is fine. All of a sudden, you've missed half the opportunity, right? But I think your approach is an approach that a lot of athletes could use to help benefit them in the their biggest goal of the year.
Yeah, and thinking about it that way, like I talked a lot about how last year I really for the first time I felt like I went deep into the swim bucket and went long and got a lot of yardage in and everything like that. If I can do that again, and if I really put all my most of my eggs in the bike basket, I'm not saying I wouldn't run, but I'd almost take my chances on that, man. Because I've trained really well for the run and I've kind of trained not well for the run, and I've kind of had similar results. And I think it boils down back to, if at Wisconsin, for example, I've had a couple of races where I think I've done about 6 hours, which is 18 and a half or something like that. And that's fine. I'm capable of that, but I've really had to work hard to do that. So I really need to kind of push my top end on that bike and get to the point where that doesn't feel that bad, and then be like, okay, well, I grew up running, playing sports, all that shit. And, the way we end up, most people typically run a Ironman marathon isn't going after it too hard. It's just a matter of just staying in the game. So it's very interesting to think about in terms of really building that bike engine, and especially if you have a good, decent swim engine, and then just kind of seeing what happens. Because, I've been running lately. I've been running a lot more this year than I have cycling for sure. But I know once my cycling hits a groove, that run's going to come up, even if I'm not running a ton, it's just going to be a natural help, I think, for the running. So I don't know. And, it's just fun to think about, but like you're saying, back to the Starbucks discussion where everybody's coming up with a great business idea and shit like that. I think about it. I work at this co-share space, and they had an entrepreneurial fair the other day, last Thursday or Friday. And I just kind of was looking around at all these people, and I kind of asked one of the guys, I'm like, hey, what's, what are you guys trying to do here? Putting out your, telling everybody what your business is and all that stuff. And he goes, well, it's a kind of a competition to see, there's like companies that come through and give you seed money and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, why don't you just do it? Why don't you just do your business? It's like, we're in a time when I feel like, you hear all the seed money is like the thing now, right? Instead of just actually doing the company. It's like you got an idea and you got an internet, and you don't need like brick and mortar stores really anymore. And you're probably, selling some kind of technology or something like that. Just start selling it and see if it works, rather than trying to get, I've heard that the other day is like most of these Silicon Valley companies with, there's a gazillion of them, new tech companies and all that, and they're all getting that seed money, and like most of them fail. They don't even, it's just like a long shot gamble all the time. And it's like, I don't understand why people just don't do the business, but I think that translates into what we're talking about is sort of like, you just got to get in there and do it. You can plan all you want and have all the greatest ideas in the world, but if you can't, like for me, if I can't put the time in on the bike, then none of that shit's going to matter,
Well, I think one of the things that you highlighted there is, well, first off, the thing about like the businesses, it reminds me of like, the 16-year-old who has to work hard and buy their own car and how they treat it versus the 16-year-old who got given a car.
Yeah.
And the difference of how things are taken care of. But when you talk about, working your bike and then it'll help everything else out, like that is one of the most focused on aspects of training with athletes is that they act like they're allergic to their weakness. I don't want to do it, right? And going back to swimming, a lot of people, it's their swim, right? Yeah. I'm not very good. I'm just not getting any faster. And you look back and you see how like their frequency if they're swimming, and it's just been like, less than 2 times average a week per year. I'm like, that's not going to make anybody better at really anything. And so you don't do it. And so you have basically, and this could be with cycling, right? Attacking hills. This could be with your run. We avoid things we don't think we're good at it. I'll give you a perfect example. I'm hitting yesterday because I played a little college tennis, so I'm not bad. And yesterday I finally hit like I actually used to play in college, but the pro that was working with me, he said, I can tell which side you favor. Because my backhand is easily my best shot. It's strong, it's fast, it's solid, it's super consistent. He says, when you go and hit your backhand, you don't act like you hope it goes in. You act like you know it's going to go in. You get your footwork right, you head out on it, you accelerate, you hit with confidence. On your forehand, you act like you hope it's going to go in. And when I can tell when you hope it's going to go in, you think too much, you don't do too much, and then usually you get what you get. Either it goes in the net, or it goes long, or sometimes it goes in the court. And he's 100% right, because I lack the confidence of being consistent in that area. And so what he focused on me was just forehand after forehand after forehand was just don't care. Accelerate through it, act like you know it's going to go in, and then coincidentally enough, right, I did. And then he would go back in and forth. He's like, so use the confidence. Anyway, so going back to training and picking something and stop avoiding your weaknesses, we all have that sport, right? For me, it's cycling. It's the weakest of the 3 for me. And but for most triathletes, it's the swim, right? It's they can't figure out how to do it better, how to do it right, how to get fast. They don't do it. So they lack overall confidence. But I think what we all forget sometimes is that confidence or lack of confidence, they're both contagious.
Yeah.
They're both contagious. The stronger you get and if you think about how they relate to each other and, how much weight is behind one, where I would argue that lack of confidence really outweighs confidence. If you really lack a ton of confidence, especially with how the swim is placed, right, in the race, you could be a super confident marathoner, right? But if you are terrified to make it to the swim, think about how much tension and stress and energy you're putting into, you're taking out of the reserves of your day at the very beginning, right? You're lacking, because it's still, again, it's not 3 different sports, it's triathlon, so it's included, right? And so focusing on the one you lack the confidence in and raising that confidence level up, it's not just going to raise the confidence level up in your swim. It's going to raise it up everywhere else, because now you become very, very, even more confident, right? Like I'll use, one of our athletes, he's affectionately known as Nick the Brick. And he came to Texas camp and worked on a swim. But last year he had a DNF in Waco. Waco is a downstream swim. He swam 2 hours. Swim, easily biggest weakness, right? And the athletes that we work with, we always focus on the swim because, again, it's 3 disciplines make up a sport of triathlon, even though people don't want to do it. And he gained so much confidence in his ability to swim. Instead of lining up terrified at Ironman Texas, he lined up with confidence. So in last October, he swam a 2-hour, 2.4 mile swim. What is that? 8 months later, April, not even 8 months. He swam a 1:27. So a 33-minute improvement in 6-7 months. The improvement isn't the piece I want you to focus on. It's the confidence you give someone when they start to raise their weakness up to where it's no longer a weakness. They consider it a strength, or at least they don't consider it a weakness, right? Because again, talking about the raising a rising tide raises all boats. Like if you think about the boats of your disciplines, swim, bike, and run, like if you got one boat that's still on shore, right, because it's your weakest discipline, the other ones don't matter, because you're gonna have to swim out to them to get there. Like it's gonna be so desperately hard to can really race with confidence because you don't have it. So there are so many easy ways to gain fitness, to get better, and to increase confidence. And it's not always about only, and again, like it's people say this all the time. I have this conversation with so many athletes, like I'm never getting better. Like, well, it's because if you're going to skip a workout, you know which one you skip? The one that's your weakest. Yeah. Every time. Like, people that love to run, never skip a run. Athletes that are great runners that don't swim very well and they don't like to swim, most likely to skip a swim. And you wonder why you get that. And then you also wonder why on race day you don't run as well, right? Because you're absolutely torched after your Olympic 70.3 or full swim. So I love the way you're kind of going about it. And I think there's so many opportunities for all athletes with all sports, right? Running, cycling, swimming, to kind of disassociate with the end goal, right? Of finishing, or of getting a PR, or of, being this place in your age group, whatever it is, disassociate from it, right? In a positive way, and focus on things that will make you a better athlete and a better triathlete and better at swimming and cycling and running specifically, because if you do those things, then it'll get you better, and even outside of the sport, right? If you think about doing really, really well in the sport, then you've got to also focus on, your main goal is to, let's say it's to, break 13 and a half hours and have a great race. Well, one of the easiest things you might be able to do is just focus on how you attack life in the kitchen, right? Are you 20, 30, 40 pounds overweight, right? Then no matter what the training you do, you could drop 10 or 15 pounds, just get fitter and feel healthier and be healthier, and you're going to be faster, right? Instead of focusing on the end goal and smashing yourself and going out on runs that are way too long, and you're way too, you're probably carrying too much fatigue and too much weight to do these runs successfully, not beat up your body, focus on some things you can do passively, right? Like, I don't think anybody would consider dieting or cleaning up your fueling passive. But in terms of a training load, it is passive, right? And it's non-impact, right? And it actually has a gigantic benefit on your performance, right? So, or maybe it's even sleep, right? All right, I know I want to do this. So instead of focusing on my end goal, I'm going to focus on eating cleaner, eating better, being healthier, and getting more sleep. Well, that alone provides more opportunities for workouts, right? Enhances recovery, reduces inflammation, fights fatigue. You can work out more. You feel better. So you train better. So the stimulus is better. And it's like all goes back. So again, most all people would be better off disassociating from their end goal or their big expectation for the year and instead focusing on, different types of goals that still have a very, very, in sync relationship with what they want to end up accomplishing.
Yeah, I love the analogy, the forehand backhand thing. I've talked about it before, but when I was a shortstop and I played in college and everything, but after college I worked on my backhand all the time because it was the weakness. And I got into a groove where maybe you're in a groove where you kind of just start liking the idea of working on it, but you don't put too much pressure on it. You just kind of do it and do it and do it. And one of the things I like about that too is that I've always been a right hand dominant person. So that can be that's my right leg. That's my right arm in swimming. It's, in cycling, I push harder, So my training, like, what do you call that? Passive improvement or whatever. I've talked about it before, but I always think in terms of my left arm, especially in the pool, because my right arm just does the shit right. You know what I mean? It handles everything right. It's stronger. It does more work naturally. So even yesterday, because I haven't been swimming a lot, the last few times I've been in the pool, I've been doing like a set, and then I'll do like a 50 instead of rest, and I'll just throw in a 50 breaststroke, just because for me it's a fuller body experience for whatever reason, and I just like it. So instead of resting, I'll just do that. But when I'm swimming, I've been really coming back, and you want to be right where you were when you're working hard, but you can't be. And so I've been just taking the pressure off that by really accentuating, going slow, but doing it with the right form, but leading with my left arm. And so when I'm pushing back, my final push with my right arm, my mind is over in my left hand the whole time. And I'm trying to get the, wider reach and a longer reach. My left arm has always been, you've seen it, my stroke is a little bit kinky with the left arm being a little shorter. The shoulder's been a little jacked up, but I'm always trying to work out on my left, and my goal is always to kind of find a better balance, because I'm probably, if you kind of weighed out the balance of, I bet my right arm does 2/3 of the work in swimming. It's you've called that a gallop stroke or whatever.
Yeah,
kind of. Yeah. But I think that's probably true. So I always think about connecting my brain more to my left side. And I think that's a big piece of the puzzle, because it's just so natural. Like you said, you go over to your backhand, your footwork is always natural. Everything's perfect. But on the forehand, it's like an overthink. So it's just like you have to, I've spent, 50 plus years doing everything naturally with my right arm or my right legs. And so I think about that in running too. And in cycling, I'm always leading. Like I have a tendency to, like, if we're looking at cadence, sometimes I'll just play around and I'll just start at a whatever, the top of the hour, and count my cadence, and I'll try and do it with my left leg, because I'm just trying to get my left leg to be more dominant and more fluid and more natural. And I think that when we get tired, we just sort of lean on our strong side all the time, and I think that throws everything out of whack. And I think really in triathlon, having a nice balance with both sides is really the key. It's like a major valued part of the equation. If you're running smoothly with both legs, doing the same stuff, and kind of taking, the same amount of weight and things like that, I think that kind of stuff goes a really long way. So I'm always trying to work on those passive pickups like that train my left side better.
No,
it sucks.
Listen, like that analogy is the one that that is perfect in terms of like how people should think about racing in general and training in general. Like I use this, not that exact analogy, obviously, but like when I was talking to our athletes yesterday on a Zoom call about how to pick races, and then how to, and then the question like, well, how do you train for specific races? And I talked about, strengths and weaknesses, and then courses, right? So I use the example of, if two different athletes are taking on a course like, Wisconsin, and how you would train these athletes. One is a really, really strong cyclist, and one's a really poor runner, and they're doing Wisconsin. Well, if they're really strong cyclists, then, you still want to keep that strength, but what you want to have is like, you want to improve their run, because they're going to come off the bike really strong. Or you want to focus on their swims. They have a strong bike, so they come off the bike super fresh and they nail the run, right? And then because it's a challenging bike course versus, the other person who might be a very weak cyclist, but a great runner and a poor, and a great swimmer. Well, where are you working? You're working on the cycling a ton, right? Because they're going to come out of the water fresh. But if they don't bike well, they don't have the bike fitness, and their run strength means nothing. Means nothing. And if you think about the percentage gains to be made and the energy saved or the requirement of energy used in, you're talking about swimming, and I'll talk about my swimming, and I have before. A lot of the ways that I self-rationalize not working hard in the pool is for me to go from, the top, I'm usually in the top 50 to 60 overall in swims and like big Ironman races. For me to go to like top 30 or to save a minute off my same 30, I'd have to swim a shit ton more a week.
Yeah.
My strength, right?
Not much room up there.
Not much room, right? And you're talking about, the putting in the work with your strong arm, but think how much work we're talking about, you should always consider and think through return on investment. If I'm a great runner, I love running, obviously you're always going to love doing it. So you're going to do it, right? But how much work is going to be required, right? With risk, because it's running, to go from, because that's what people do. They just focus on the run portion, right? So they was like, my run was really terrible, or it was good. It's 4 hours. I need to get down to 340. So I really do a really like a ton of running, and that's gonna be better. And then you think about the injury risk that comes out, the risk and fatigue, and how much, how sore you get from working that much, harder on it, and how stressful it is in your body. And then you look back and you're like, well, actually, like, if you didn't come out of the water, 30 minutes behind the rest of your age group, then maybe that wouldn't be such an issue. Right. And so you think about the return on investment from, improving your swim significantly, right? That also transfers directly to fitness, in cycling and running, but also allows you to bike fresher. So you start off the bike fresher and come off the bike fresher, and you can actually really use your weapon. Right. And for a guy like you, that's like, like one of our big focuses early this year with a lot of athletes has been making their running economy more efficient.
Right.
So they can run easier and more efficiently. And that means also running easier at a faster pace. And you're doing that with so much less injury risk. And so it's sometimes it's not about, because again, a lot of athletes think about going faster is, about being faster and racing faster and training faster. Well, faster gets you, can happen in a lot of ways. And sometimes, and swimming is the best of the sports to think about it, like swimming, then running, then cycling, because you could focus on your technique in the pool and drop 10 to 15 seconds per 100 and come out of the water 12 minutes faster in your race at a full, or maybe 6 and 7.3. It's like you don't even have to do a transition. You're already on your bike and you're fresher. And guess how much more confident you are when you toe the line. That confidence and fitness transfers. And so for a guy like you, it's like, yeah, but I got my 90% here. Well, how much work are you going to have to do, and how much load is that arm going to have to carry to go from swimming a 1:14, 1:15 Ironman Wisconsin swim to a 1:10 where it's really going to matter, right? Or I could focus on, your Nemo side, which we'll call it, it's like your little fin, because your shoulder issues, like what could I do to make this to where I can at least get a little more out of it, or make it an easier time on my right. So maybe again, people think about speed, and you think about energy use and the energy required to create locomotion, to create you moving forward. Maybe it's not being faster. Maybe it's allowing your right arm not to work as hard,
right? But
to go the same speed. So you're saving energy, right? And that's something we talk about a lot with the athletes that come to our swim camps or tri camps where we swim. Is like, listen, if you can swim easier and your effort's no longer a 7, right? At RP and a scale 1:10 coming out of 7.3 Ironman swim, it goes down to a 4 or 5. Your time might be the same or maybe slightly faster, but the energy saved is massive. Is massive. And good to go back to the analogy or the example I gave with Nick the Brick. 33 minutes in the water less Yes, it's a time saving, which is great. But from a energy saving, when you go to get on the bike, is massive, massive energy saved,
Yeah.
calories saved, glycogen stores, you know, still intact. It's significant. The domino starts at the beginning in the swim. And so when you look at different athletes and you look at your where can I do the most damage, right, on the race course, like in a positive way, and do the least amount of damage to myself and do the best. And again, everybody always piles on the run, but usually it's, you go back and look at their swim times and they're like, well, I could do this. I'm like, well, yeah, it also just like the confidence, being well-rounded and looking at some, details like you're doing is just a great way to approach things and increase confidence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it. I mean, we have been working a lot with the run economy, and I've been doing that as I run. And I've noticed this. I'll just throw high knees in the middle of my running a lot, and it's just sort of like, oh, first of all, you end up kind of just right after that. I seem to just kind of go faster naturally, but it reminds me that I think a lot of times when I run, I'm just lazy. I'm going easy and going slow with zone 2, zone 1 stuff on the running shouldn't mean lazy. And I think that, we talk about a lot of people who want to run the distance before Ironman just to do it or whatever. And as you're talking about Nick, that swim, he was probably, the form he had for that 2-hour swim was probably just awful. And it takes so much more energy on top of the fact that he's going in there longer. And same with running. It's like sometimes we stretch out runs so long and the energy zapped with the bad form and the lazy legs and the whole 9 yards is counterproductive, I believe. So when I think about that, as far as my swim and my bike and everything like that, I'm really, again, it's these micro goals. It's about really improving the form and the approach and things like that, and how much easier you can make it, but still be faster. I mean, in the past, when we used to do that, I always go back to that track workout for Muncie, and the whole goal was, to run basically a half marathon on a track with each mile getting faster a little bit. Mm-hmm. And we did it, and we'd take like a 30-second break or a minute or whatever and drink some fluids and then go out and do it again. We did it blind by effort, and I still think that's one of the greatest things that you've ever come up with, personally. I just thought it was the coolest shit ever, but
so bad. But it was so hot that day. It was Overton's high school track, right?
Yep. And I just remember as we kept going, and I don't know how. I think we did pretty good as far as going a little bit faster, and it was all based on effort and feel and stuff like that. And I just remember like the last lap, it was sort of I went out and I just sort of let it go. And what my feeling is like, this feels easier. I just didn't have the, economy or the strength or the fitness to hold that long. But when you run faster and with better form, and you're not like pounding as hard and slowly getting off the pavement, it does feel easier. So I think there's a secret in there somewhere. And I think that's where the run economy and doing these things with the high knees and butt kicks and things like that really do help you go faster with less energy, but to get the transition to get there and get into that shape and to not be a lazy runner is the hard part. I've been, the other thing I was thinking about, because you mentioned weight, and I was thinking about this too. I was like, I want to obviously lose by race day, maybe like 15 pounds or something like that. And I was thinking to myself, well, realize that now, because you're putting more pounding and, it's harder to run. But, think about it in terms of just getting your legs stronger, because when, if and when that weight starts falling off, things are going to start naturally getting a little bit easier, because you're going to be stronger pulling less weight. So in my mind, I'm like trying to convince myself that this is a good tactic, the old hibernate and then kind of shed it as you go.
The focus that we choose, I think, is often indicative of what we choose or what we don't choose, from a detail, like you talked about running economy. I think it's kind of a warped sense of focus if you think about it. Running economy, swimming efficiency, right? Aerobic efficiency, on the bike, they're all boring. Right? You talk about, being aerobically efficient and just being very aerobically efficient means a lot of long hours being aerobic, which is boring, but it also makes you faster and is what you need for race day. Running economy, I don't really want to focus on my form and do some drills or just doing, economy focus, run form. I just want to go out and run hard and run fast, right? Harder on your body. The other one, maybe a little bit more mental work, but easier on your body and makes you faster. Same with swimming, right? I don't want to go to the pool because I can't get faster. So you're not faster, right? It's like it's become human nature that and you see it all the time. And the coaches see this every time someone races is the amount of comments that coaches get or questions coaches get about workouts or comparing this to this or, coach, I went I spent like 3 minutes above zone 3 today, and I just really want to make sure this isn't, going to be hurtful or harmful to my workout and my, the adaptation. I'm like, no. But the same athletes who are super focused on how hard they can go or not going hard enough are the same ones a lot of times don't read the athlete guide, don't have a fueling plan, don't know what kind of gear they're going to use, don't know what to expect on the bike course, don't know the rules. All these things that are so detailed that you need to know, front to back, memorized, practiced, that's free speed, are ignored because they're detailed. They can't, you can't upload to Strava. I spent 45 minutes today calculating my best nutrition fueling plan. 19 likes. Mike Trolley is now the local legend of the local vitamin shop for the time he spent looking in aisle 4. You can't put it on there yet. That's the stuff that happens. People focus on how hard and how fast I can go, but what they don't understand and what they don't spend time on a lot is the efficiency and the details that allow you to go the speed you want to go. They just focus on, again, the end goal, speed itself, right? You talked about on the track. I had the engine. I just couldn't hold form long enough. Then speed is irrelevant. Joe Filiol, one of the best coaches on the planet, coach of a high performance ITU squad. I think he had a quote a few years ago. And he said, it doesn't matter how fast you run if you can't run that fast the last 200 meters. It's irrelevant. Because he was talking about track workouts and his love of tempo runs and hill running and longer runs for even athletes that do 5Ks and 10Ks as their long race distance. He's like, it doesn't matter. If you can't run fast 200 meters, then does it really matter how fast you can go? As on how fast you can go the first 200, how fast you can go the last. And so again, it's really interesting when you want to talk about free speed or athletes that want to buy an aero helmet, right? And that may or may not even benefit them and fit them right enough to save any time, or they're wondering about what PSI they should run in their tires on race day. They don't even know how to change a tire, right? It's just we have such a warped sense of focus and details and what allows for you to go the fastest on race day, doing the best work. Because easy is fast, right? It's the easier you go, the easier your fast is, the longer you can do it. And most people are just focused on like that 5% critical speed or velocity and what they can hold for 30 seconds or 4 minutes at their, local track workout or in their Zwift race. And they totally disregard all the other things that fall under the category of, to me, free speed. To me, free speed is things that you can purchase or focus on that don't require training stress. Because that's the stuff that you have to work around. Like, I would look at your training and be like, all right, Mike, like we don't need to put in, I think 3.5 hours is probably the max you should run this week, because anything over 4 is really kind of the tipping point of training stress, or 12 or 13 hours and how we've got, distributed is, we're kind of the tipping point. That's too much stress. You're going to end up digging yourself a hole, and it's going to take us too long to get out of. Like, that's what you have to worry about. Everything else is free speed. So I'm not going to be like, Mike, I know we've got an hour of trial and error research on making sure your fueling strategy is correct, and then optimizing the right helmet and the wheel set. Like, I think that's too much, because it's gonna cause too much, free speed training stress on the next day. So I think we should probably taper that down to maybe 10 minutes, or just take the day off. No, it's free speed, right? Nail your fueling. Know your wetsuit's going to fit. Train in your wetsuit, right? Have the wheels at work. Make sure your tires are the right size. Make sure you can change a tire. Make sure your PSI is right. Make sure the tire you got is fast. If you've got wheels, make sure you got the wheels that are the best for the race course that you're going to be on. If you haven't gotten a bike fit, get a bike fit. Bike fit is free speed. Yes, you got to pay money to get a good fit, but it's free speed. It's going to save you so much time over a bike course. Run. Make sure your bike fueling strategy is good, so your run can be good. Make sure you know what to take on the run, what not to take on the run. Make sure your gear is correct. Make sure you have a plan. That's all free speed, and it's all ignored. You get as a coach, you get the least amount of questions about stuff like that until, I don't know, maybe like the 32 hours before the race. All the other stuff is, hey, I really think I could bump up my threshold by 5 seconds and go a little bit faster. And the other stuff, they just don't. Hey, I bought a new pair of shoes at the expo and I got blisters at mile 8.
Yeah.
Like, really? It's just when you think about thinking things, easier is faster. Easier is faster. And to make your easy faster is the goal, not smashing yourself every day, and then also not disregarding all other opportunities for speed to make, and it's fueling especially. So it's like, again, there's a lot of ways to reach your goal, and the easiest ones are a lot better, or just a lot easier to do and easier on your body than smashing yourself every day or trying to avoid your weakness and only focus on your strength.
Yeah. That reminds me of a quick analogy. I'm building a house up north, and I went up to check on it a few weeks ago, and they were in the drywall phase, and they had a forklift full of drywall, and they drove it around to the backyard, and I was kind of just watching them, and a couple guys picked up, they were like the big sheets, like 10 feet by, well, I guess 4, but they were doubled up, taped together, and so they pulled off a couple of those sheets, and they carried them inside, and then they did it again. I'm like, fuck, I bet. So I said, I'll help, because they had an extra guy. So I went over and got it, and that thing came off, and it almost ripped my arm off. And I was like dying carrying this thing in. And then we dropped it off, and I'm like, shit, there's a big stack of them. I knew I had to do about 10 of them. And we got back out there, and I did it again. I'm like, man, this is heavy. It's hard. He goes, dude, you're doing it wrong. He goes, he kind of got into me. I'm like, dude, I'm just helping you out here. And he made me like put my arm a different way and then handle, and then it became easier. He showed me the method. So we were going faster, and it was easier. And I guess that's the point. Is like, if there could be little tweaks in your regime that you're holding yourself back. And in fact, the developer guy was there, and he goes, he was kind of pissed off that day at somebody else, and he's kind of being shitty. And finally he looked at me, he goes, dude, you're the only homeowner on this whole project that's ever helped with anything. He goes, ever. And he goes, I'm going to give you a GSD award. I said, GSD?
Get shit done, man.
Getting shit done.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah. But, the point is, carrying drywall is not easy if you're not using it from method. I don't know how much that shit weighs, but it was like legit. Two sheets taped together.
Yeah. It's
on a sandy
good for you.
slope.
Yeah.
It was brutal.
It's like worse and harder to carry than a mattress. It's like no good way to carry those things. It's like,
yeah,
I love what you said, because it's the we can end it here, but like, that's a comment that Hayden's baseball coach said after Saturday. Like, there was like, it's just him, and then like anybody who wants to help, and it's like 13, 14 kids, and it's like herding cats. They're all in first grade, and there was, I think, I don't know, 5 other dads helping out, and it's cold. It's when it's like 38 degrees. And after practice, he's like, hey, I really appreciate, you guys, helping today. I look around at all the other teams, and, all the dads just stand there and watching, but they still want to complain about why their kids aren't any better.
Yeah.
I'm like, all you gotta do is give a little bit of time. Right. And just, like you said, get shit done. Mm-hmm. Help out with the drywall. That's the blue collar in you, though. That's something that I appreciate. So yeah, to summarize it and cap it all off is, don't be afraid. Instead of being afraid of your weaknesses, think about how much confidence you'll gain by working on them not being a weakness. Avoiding anything is never the answer, ever. Avoiding it is never the answer. Attack it, go after it, get better. And I promise you, that confidence you gain will infiltrate and be infused in the other disciplines that you're already strong at. It completes your toolbox. It allows you to do things differently. So find a way, attack that. Again, whether it's running, cycling, swimming, pay attention to the details. Don't just focus on the hard. Pay attention to the details. Leave no stone unturned, because more than likely, all the stones that you didn't overturn, that's where your victory is going to be. You're focused on the other ones, and it might be into that small pebble. It might probably be into the boulders you think has to be lifted before race day. So make sure you take care of those. If you're looking to take care of some of your weaknesses or address them, we do have a few training camps that are still open. We've got June camp, which has a couple spots left. That is in June in Nashville. Pool sessions, open water, the best cycling you can find on the Natchez Trace Parkway, safe roads, great pavement, great people, awesome running, great experience. It's been our most popular camp. We've done it for, I think, 6 years now, had over 300 people come the last 6 years. So it's a really amazing time. So if you're looking for that camp, hop on. And you can go to our website, c26triathlon.com, click on the camps tab and scroll down. We also have our training camp in Wisconsin. That is the end of July. Another great opportunity to get in some open water swimming, train in the Wisconsin bike course and run course, and just in general have a great weekend and learn some new things and push yourself. Again, attack your weaknesses, leave no stone unturned. If you have any, again, that's on the camps tab on our website. If you have any questions about those specifically, you can email Summer, c26operations@gmail.com. If you need anything from Mike Drywall Tirali, he is available at crushingiron@gmail.com. If you need anything from me, I'm at c26coach@gmail.com.
All right. Yep. Thanks, buddy. Go get that gear, everybody.
Yeah, go get it.
All right, man. I'll catch you later.
All right. See you, dude.